Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us again this afternoon with Hudson County Review Live. I am your host, John R. Heinis, and here's my esteemed colleague Marc Bussanich. And let's just get right to it today. We got a lot to talk about. So, Marc, Bayonne looks like it is living up to the hype this election season, huh?
Wow, it's incredible. I mean, the election is still, like 4 months away, but you had three stories on your homepage today. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, so for those that haven't had a chance to read, whether you've been dealing with picking up the kids or going to work and, just your day-to-day business, basically what happened is there's been a lawsuit filed against Mayor Jimmy Davis, of course, of Bayonne in Hudson County Superior Court, and there's some pretty bold allegations there. I mean, this is something that we've discussed several times over in the past, dating back to May of last year. It's basically a suit revolving around sexting between a former City Hall employee and the mayor. And in this, she's claiming that the mayor offered to settle a previous lawsuit in the outgoing days of the former Marc Smith administration in exchange for some sort of romantic relationship. And the number she threw out there was $150,000. So since then, it's been an interesting 24 hours because, Mayor Davis had a fundraiser last night. It was still fairly well attended. I mean, certainly over 100. You could maybe argue 150 people showed up. His council candidates were there. Freeholder Kenny Kopaz of Bayonne, of course, was there. Assemblyman Nick Travelati was there. So, it looked like he still has a pulse. But what do you think this means for May 8th as of today, Marc?
Well, I mean, he's obviously facing some serious allegations. I mean, I was actually at that City Council hearing when Stacey Priscilla announced, or was there at City Hall rather, where she first announced that she was filing a lawsuit, and obviously that story hasn't gone away. So now, given that he had this fundraiser last night, and obviously a lot of people were chanting 4 more years, he seems to still have pretty good support among the community. But I wonder, with this sexting scandal, how will that sit with the rest of the residents in Bayonne?
Yeah, I mean, Bayonne seems to be pretty loyal. I mean, based on what I can read of the situation up to this point, it looks like anyone that was going to vote for Jimmy Davis in May is probably still going to vote for him today. But, we don't have the full breadth of every single text message from start to finish, meaning, we don't know if we're talking dozens, hundreds, thousands. The lawsuit outlines some text messages. They've dismissed this in the past as, playful banter, friends joking around. But, some of the messages I saw in there, like, reference to the lawsuit, like, I love that ass. I've never sent that to a friend. I don't know about you, but that's not in my repertoire.
Certainly not via text.
Certainly not via text. But be that as it may, whatever it is, it's going to be interesting. And I mean, all indications are that Marc Smith's going to run again as of now, subject to change. Nothing's official until it is. But whatever the case may be, as I've said previously, I mean, Bayonne's clearly going to be the most exciting place to be in the first half of 2018.
John, it's interesting. You had the opportunity to interview on camera Mayor Jim Davis at the fundraiser, and you asked him outright about this lawsuit, and he just seemed to dismiss it, that it was just Miss Stacey Priscilla was just trying to get a big payday.
That's essentially, in a few words, what he said. He said this is someone looking for a payday, similar to the lawsuit against the prior administration, which I already touched on, and I think most people were previously aware. And, he actually even said, I can't wait till we get a chance to defend it in court. So, up to this point, it's an interesting dynamic because he's admitted to sending the messages, but he's basically saying no wrongdoing was committed because there was no kind of quid pro quo, like I'll do this for you in exchange for this sexual favor or anything along those lines. So, again, we'll see where it goes. I mean, discovery, if we get that far between now and May, is certainly going to be something to watch. Ms. Priscilla also has a case on the federal level. It's not a lawsuit, it's a complaint, but I mean, that can lead to further depositions and further discovery. So it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of both of these cell phones between now and then.
Sure. I mean, just thinking from the voters' perspective, I mean, they hear Ms. Priscilla making a strong case saying that these sexual or sexting was occurring between she and the mayor, but the mayor, on the other hand, is saying, "Oh no, this is it's nothing like that." So, from the voters' perspective, it must be really difficult to learn or to believe who's telling the truth here.
Well, just to be clear, I mean, the mayor has said that he has sent at least some of the texts. I don't think he's actually sat down and checked off or highlighted, which ones he sent or didn't send or anything like that. But he has admitted that some of these text exchanges certainly did happen. But again, he's attributed to playful banter. Said this is somebody he's been friends with for 35 years, and they were just joking around.
I see.
Ms. Priscilla hasn't appreciated that argument from what I've seen online.
Right, of course, what you've reported. But do you think that she'd be willing to risk her reputation if it was just wanting a big payday? You think that's something that she would be willing to do to alienate herself from the community?
I would be surprised if that was the case. I mean, again, we've established that at least a good portion of these text messages occurred, as to why they occurred, as to who said what, as to when they occurred. I mean, there's still a lot of variables that need to come out of the wash, as they say. But, I mean, there's no question, let's put it this way, that this is going to linger well beyond Election Day. So, to your earlier point, like, what does this mean to the voters of Bayonne? I mean, I think Bayonne voters are pretty loyal. If they were with Jimmy before, I think they're going to stick with him now. The only thing that I think would really sway someone from his camp would be if multiple accusers surface between now and May. Just to be clear, I have no indication that that's going to happen, but anything short of that, I really don't see a lot of his supporters jumping ship, just because I think they're drawing the line between what's your personal life and your professional life. And you could argue whether or not you agree with that stance, but I think that's a stance a lot of his camp has taken.
John, it's interesting, and the person who's mostly benefiting from this is his main opponent right now, James O'Donnell, who was quick to... Jason O'Donnell, I should say, excuse me. Ex-Assemblyman Jason O'Donnell, who was quick to say that Jim Davis isn't fit to receive a second term to lead Bayonne.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise. I mean, that's the way politics and elections go. I mean, when you're embroiled in a scandal, obviously, if it's election season, it's prime time, as we have pointed out, and as everybody watching and listening knows. Your opponent's going to hit you when there's no holds barred at a place like Bayonne. They're going to kick you when you're down. So this is just the beginning. But it is interesting that Jason points out the state legislature, through Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin and Senate Majority Leader Loretta Weinberg, two respected members, obviously ranking members, are working on making sexual harassment policies a lot more clear, a lot more stringent. So, that's certainly something to keep an eye on from a statewide perspective. But, I mean, certainly not the 24 hours you were hoping for if you were Mayor Davis.
Interesting. There's no doubt that ex-Assemblyman Jason O'Donnell will be using that throughout the campaign from now till May. He'll be hitting that message home, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying, absolutely.
So, John, did you want to continue talking about Bayonne? Any other news that came out of the fundraiser last night, or were some of the other weak stories would you like to discuss?
So, just on a final parting note, just as far as Bayonne is concerned, I mean, I was, just looking around the room again. All the electeds from Bayonne seem to still have his back. So,
interesting.
It's going to be interesting to see what kind of charge O'Donnell will have off the line. I mean, he has some good labor endorsements, but if Marc Smith jumps in, next week, next month, it's a whole new ballgame. So I'll leave it at that for now. So let's travel down to Hoboken here for a moment.
Sure.
So obviously, you had the pleasure of going to the council meeting on Wednesday.
Wednesday evening, that's right.
And one of the things that was big this week was this public safety task force introduced by Mayor Ravi Bala, and they really want to curtail these unruly bar crawls like SantaCon, Leprechaun.
Sure.
Obviously, residents that are married, have kids, they're not really appreciative of 21-year-olds puking in their rose bushes and such,
and fighting on the streets and so forth.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of childish behavior, I guess you could call it. But to your point, I mean, there is also some violent behavior. So, there was a measure that was going to go in front of the council about limiting crowds outside of bars. So you could only have, I believe it was like 10 people in line, which is a pretty stringent policy. However, it was pulled. But,
by the administration.
Yes.
Correct.
It was pulled. But,
even though they introduced it.
Yeah, so look, you were there. You're obviously anxious to talk about it. So why don't you jump in?
Well, I mean, it was interesting to see the multiple bar owners that were in attendance that night, and two of them had two of them spoke before the council. One, Aiden Boyle, who's the owner of McSwiggin's Pub, and then also Mike Ciriello of Texas, Arizona. I think of a couple other establishments, and both expressed concern, frustration. Mr. Boyle said, well, when he first heard about this proposed public safety task force, he had told the council he wished that somebody from the administration or somebody from the council had spoken to the bar owners first, and then Mike Ciriello, when it was his turn, expressed frustration that, well, bar owners are already dealing with stringent regulations from the zoning office, where he explained when his establishment tries to put out an A-frame size, maybe announcing the special for the day, the zoning office, according to him, is telling him that they cannot have that kind of signage out in the street. So just like Mr. Boyle, Mr. Ciriello expressed a lot of concern about this public safety task force. But there's no doubt that these recent events, these SantaCon and LepreCon, has caused a lot of. There's been, in fact, police officers have been injured in the melee. So, some of the residents that were there weren't necessarily in agreement with what the bar owners' concerns. They feel that the quality of life is more important than having a big event such as a SantaCon or LepreCon being held in the town every year.
Sure. So, Marc, I mean, you're a couple years older than me. You're married. It's been a long time since you've been interested in a SantaCon type of bar crawl, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Just since last week.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, but seriously, though, so just when you're looking at all this stuff, you're sitting there watching, listening. I mean, what's your take on this? How do you think this resolves? And, I mean, how do you think is the direction to move?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because these are businesses, and businesses are the lifeblood of the community, right? And in many respects, alcohol and alcoholic sales, people going to bars and restaurants, spending their money in those establishments, they generate a lot of cash, a lot of revenue. So they're an important economic driver for the town. But on the flip side, though, for a lot of these residents, and not even during a LepreCon or a SantaCon, but just from the noise, the people in the community that have to deal with the noise from the bars, their quality of life could be affected multiple times throughout the week. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of measures, what kind of regulations that the administration will try to impose. I guess the aim or the objective would be to completely eliminate those two big high volume events, but then there might be complaints from the hospitality industry that they're going to be losing millions of dollars in profits if the city does decide to cancel those two big events.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about millions. I mean, I'm not really sure what kind of revenue they're generating at these events, but I mean, it's certainly substantial. As you can see, this is just round one. I mean, this is going to continue for many, many months. It's going to be interesting, though, when we get to March, because, I mean, LepreCon's just around the corner. So,
oh, wow, that's correct, yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But also at the Hoboken Council, you noticed that there was some discrepancies among the council, I guess you could say. A little bit of tension when we were talking about instant runoffs.
Yes, indeed.
So why don't you tell us about that?
Well, so there seems to be, I don't know about split down the middle, but some members have said, or did say rather, that they are in favor of instant runoffs. I think it was Councilman Russo who said that he's not for it. In fact, I think it was back in 2012 was when this issue had first come up, and he said that he had voted against it.
Well, that was to eliminate runoff elections completely from Hoboken.
To eliminate them, correct. So he made the point that he's not in favor of the instant runoff. In fact, he made the point that if you compare based on data from other towns, like for example, like Jersey City, there's no really significant variation between the election, the initial primary election, versus meaning the turnout, that is. The turnout doesn't really seem to differ that much between the initial election and then the instant runoff election. So they like a lot of the council members expressed the idea they like the concept, making sure that everybody has it provides the maximum opportunity and maximum optimization for people being able to vote. But they also expressed concern about the cost, about how much this is going to cost the town. I think a number they mentioned was that for each instant runoff election that they hold, it'll cost the town, the city taxpayers, $140,000.
It's not chump change.
And no, it's not. So, and given what Mr. Russo had said about, well, if there's no significant variation between the primary election date and then the instant runoff date, I guess he was calling into question whether or not is it really worth it for the town to spend $140,000 if there's no significant variation.
Well, just to be clear, there's two types of runoffs that we're talking about here. The one that was removed from the ballot is the standard runoff, which is when, let's just say November 7th you have the general election, somebody fails to break 50%, so then December 5th you go back to the polls and vote again. That's your standard runoff.
I see.
The instant runoff, where let's say there's 4 people on the ballot, you actually number your choices 1 through 4, and in the event that someone doesn't break the 50%, then you go, okay, would you write in for 2, would you write in for 3, would you write in for 4?
I see.
So, and the other thing I want to point out too is we see this a lot at the county level, where there's resolutions in front of the elected officials, and they'll vote, urging somebody else to do something, and that's what we have here. Because just so everybody's on the same page, in Hoboken or any other municipality, the governing bodies, the councils, the boards of commissioners, they don't have the ability to just implement instant runoffs. All they could do was urge the legislature to put that forward. So I just wanted to make that perfectly clear. So while I'm sure the resolution was well-intentioned by the new councilwoman, Emily Jabor, at the end of the day, even if they voted yes across the board, honestly, it really is not an immediate effect or impact. So...
Right, because at first Trenton has to review that proposal first.
Well, it's not even the review per se, because basically they have to make the decision. They have to leave it up to the Assembly and the Senate to pass it through. So, if enough municipalities pass something like this, you could argue that puts the pressure on them to do something.
Right.
But the ball's in their court.
I see. Well, there was some, there was additional dialogue about the instant runoff election. In fact, at one point, it got a little bit heated because Councilman Michael DeFusco misinterpreted what Councilman at Large James Doyle said. Councilman DeFusco thought that, because one of the issues that did come up about the instant runoff election is that this might just complicate the issue for the electorate. Like, if there's not a process by which they're informed that there'll be this additional instant runoff election, and if the electorate isn't educated about it, well, they might be a little bit confused about the meaning of it. So at one point, Councilman at-large Doyle had said that, assuming that the electorate is not ignorant of this type of process, that we implement a new type of election process. But Michael DeFusco in turn thought that Councilman Doyle was saying to the audience that the electorate is ignorant and therefore wouldn't know how to process the new instant runoff election information. So it did get a little bit heated, but again, it seemed like everybody likes the idea of maximum participation, maximum voter turnout. But again, there's some other drawbacks, and actually the resolution, they tabled it, right? They tabled it, and most of the council members said that they would like to sit together as a unified body and review the resolution, because they each had some disagreements about the wording of it. Okay. Yeah.
Anything else that caught your attention in Hoboken on Wednesday?
Well, obviously we already discussed the public safety task force issue,
right?
Of course. I think also, those were the two main issues that came up during the council hearing on Wednesday night. Okay. Yeah.
And another thing, and this was actually an event that neither of us attended. I was our esteemed colleague Catherine Guest, but there was a ceremonial swearing in, which frankly I've never heard of, but there was a ceremonial swearing in of Jersey City Mayor Fulop also last night, and the governor, Phil Murphy, stopped by. I believe you had a chance to review that video. It feels like it wasn't that long ago where Mayor Fulop on the steps of City Hall endorsed Murphy for governor, but that was already now 16 months ago.
Interesting.
So I don't know. What do you think about their relationship going forward based on that video that we saw?
Well, now governor, we've been saying governor-elect for a while, but now officially governor,
Sure.
who said, Hudson County is so important, it's a place that as it goes, the rest of New Jersey goes.
Yes, he said that.
He did say that, and he said it 2 times, actually. So I would think it behooves him to maintain a formidable relationship with Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop, particularly with some of the, being that he would like to implement some progressive policies. I think he's going to need the backing and support of Mayor Stephen Fulop.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's something to watch. I mean, whenever we're talking about Mayor Fulop, people are always talking about, maybe a run for Congress, maybe a run for Senate, maybe even a run for governor. But there was a tweet the other day. I don't know if it came across your computer, but there was a tweet the other day, and he basically said he left the door wide open about running for a 3rd term. So, I mean, obviously it's extremely early. I mean, we're only about not even 3 weeks into his 2nd term, but if you had to take just a wild guess today based on what you're seeing, based on his dominant victory back in November, I mean, what do you think's next for Fulop?
Well, I mean, it was interesting because some of the talk at the end of his 1st term would be that he would be running for governor, and personally, I guess I was kind of surprised that he didn't run, but I guess he felt that he needed to burnish his credentials a little bit more by establishing himself even more so in his 2nd term. And I would think that at the end of his 2nd term, given some of the policies that he wants to make sure are that he implements during his 2nd term, that he will then be in a better position to run for governor. So I think it would be a very good chance for him to seek the governorship at the end of the 2nd term versus at the end of his 1st term.
So you think in 4 years, there's a good chance Phil Murphy doesn't run for governor again?
Only not even 1 weekend. Again, I just based on personally thinking that I think Stephen Fulop has built up his credentials with his 1st term, and I think he'll have a lot to accomplish in his 2nd term, and that might put him in a better position to launch a much bigger campaign.
It's always going to be tough, though, depending with Murphy in the field, because obviously, he has an unlimited war chest. He could spend as much money as you and I can dream of. So
sure, but remember what Ron Greco of the Jersey City State Education Association told you a couple weeks ago, that given what Phil Murphy was saying on the campaign trail,
he's got a lot of promises. Yeah,
I think Ron Greco said, I hope he has the key to Fort Knox for everything that he's promising. So I guess if he doesn't come through on a lot of these promises, it might affect the electorate at the end adversely affect the electorate at the end of his 1st term.
Sure, and I mean, we're just spitballing. Obviously, 4 years in politics is many, many, many lifetimes. And actually, Marc, on a parting note, I think we did a good job of summarizing what's been happening this week. But just on my way over here, I don't know if you even saw this, but it looks like the U.S. Department of Justice will be retrying U.S. Senator Bob Menendez. So
interesting.
That's something that I certainly wasn't expecting. I doubt most of our viewers were expecting that either. I mean, I don't know if this is the first you're hearing it, but I mean, what's your reaction?
Yes. Well, I remember, wasn't it just a month ago, or about 2 months ago, I think late sometime in November, when the announcement was that, he was appearing in Newark back in November.
Right, federal court.
Federal court. And so it got a lot of media attention, so I thought for sure the big news would be that there might be...
not guilty.
Well, actually, I thought the way it was being played up, I thought it could be
guilty.
Yeah, just because of all the media attention it was getting, and a lot of commentary about it, and then it was not guilty, and it just seemed to end without any drama, I guess, which I was surprised by. But now to hear this, why would they want to go back and if they already made the decision that there was no evidence?
Well, keep in mind that a lot of people forget, or a lot of people glossed over the fact there was no definitive guilty or not guilty. It was a hung jury. And the senator and many others have said 10 of the 12 jurors believe that he wasn't guilty. But regardless, that's still a hung jury, so it was up to the DOJ, Department of Justice, to decide if they wanted to try it again. And apparently they feel they have a case. I mean, a pretty bold move. And it's extremely interesting because if you or anyone else is unaware, I mean, the senator's up for re-election this year.
Interesting, very interesting. So I guess they're hoping for a new jury selection then.
Well, this is very new. I mean, obviously, yes, they're going to need a new jury. I mean, I don't know what the timeline looks like, but certainly I would imagine they're going to try to do this well before the June primary.
And maybe just to inform our audience, John, specifically, what is the DOJ going after Senator Bob Menendez for again?
So basically, they're saying that one of his most prominent donors, a very wealthy doctor from Florida, used his wealth to basically buy the senator's influence. The senator's team countered that, that's not what happened. This is one of my best friends. We've known each other for decades. It has nothing to do with politics. And, again, that ended in a hung jury the first time around. So, we're going to take two on this one, and who knows what's going to happen. But
interesting.
Do you think this opens the door perhaps for a Democratic Senate challenge for the senator?
Well, with the Democrats kind of holding on to dear life, I mean, any further losses in the House or the Senate would mean more dire news for the Democratic Party.
That sounds like a fair assessment. It'll be interesting, too, to see what happens on the Republican side because, with this news, you're going to have to imagine they smell blood in the water,
So you think Chris Christie could be the challenger?
I'm going to say that's not it, but I mean, I like your spirit, Mark. I like your spirit. So any parting thoughts for us today?
Well, listen, John, great for having me with this during this discussion. We've been conducting some great interviews throughout, as we did throughout 2017. We'll be looking forward to more interviews with elected officials, community leaders, business leaders, and we want to thank you for participating in the 2018's, or should I say, Hudson County Review Live 2018's first Facebook Live.
All right, thanks, Mark. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, these are the two guys that live up to the hype. We're dope in the field and magic on the mic. We'll see you next time.